Hello and welcome back to the FSF Podcast. I am Tim. I am your host and the king of this here nerd ranchero. So welcome to the nerdatorium. Our guest today in said nerdatorium is an amazing actress that you may have recognized from shows such as Resident Alien. I'm kind of a fan. Reservation Dogs, Total Drama, 10-Star, Goosebumps, and there's a whole lot of other things. She's got a really cool IMDb. That's the word I was looking for. IMDb resume. And so you're going to want to check that out. Matter of fact, we'll put a link down below. You guys will be able to check it out there. But she's also really passionate about her work regarding the elevation of and raising awareness for Jewish and Indigenous First Nations narratives in the entertainment business. I'm really excited to talk to her about that once we get her on screen here. And she also does some voiceover work. But also, we're going to talk about how her background has shaped her view of her work, her storytelling, and life in general. So it should be a really fun conversation, and I am really excited to welcome Sarah Podemski to the FSF Podcast. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Yay! Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited. So grateful that you said yes. I'm always thankful when somebody says yes, because I was talking to another guest a couple weeks back. I'm always like, when I reach out to somebody, I'm always like, hello, would you please mind coming to my show? Thank you. So I get a little excited when people say yes. It's always a cool thing because there's something that you've done or something that you've been a part of that makes me want to reach out and talk to you. And so I'm always excited when somebody says yes because of that. So now, for those of you who haven't caught on, her name is the same last name as somebody we had a few weeks ago. So she's the sister of Tamara Podemski. So if you noticed, Sarah, I always start our shows in the same way because I'm a nerd and nerds love a good origin story. So in the story of Sarah Podemski, what made you say, I want to be an entertainer?
Ooh. It's interesting because it's an origin story. I'm now blanking on what superhero or origin story would be like, but it was kind of like not like mistaken identity, but I went with my sister Tamara to an audition that she had. I was, I think, 11, and they needed someone to play her character 5 years younger. And I just happened to be there because I was there with my dad and I was tagging along, and they asked me to audition. And it was really not until that point that I had thought about getting into film or television. I loved performing. I was, I took my tap classes and my ballet and my jazz. I was at a performing arts school, but I hadn't really had the thought of like, oh, I can't wait to be on screen. I can't wait to be famous. Like I don't remember having any of those thoughts. So it was kind of a fluke that I happened to be there, and that got me an agent and got me kind of into this world. So it was really because of, joining Tamara on that audition, which is funny because she has a similar story of getting into the industry or a similar industry story of Jenny being with her at a meeting with Bruce McDonald, and then that leading to Dance Me Outside, which is a whole other thing. So it's kind of actually funny now that I think about it, that we have a similar indirect way that we, got into this industry and have been working for a very long time in the industry, all three of us.
That is interesting. It's interesting to me too, because having had an opportunity to talk with so many people who have siblings in the entertainment business, where it's not just that, oh, hey, they're doing it, so I'm here, I might as well, but how that being there, watching them go through the audition process, or even past the audition process for some, where they're watching them do their first commercial dance routine, whatever it may have been. And that is what kind of like lit the fire of, oh, this is actually kind of cool, and this might be a whole lot of fun, and I think I should look more into this. And then it became not just something that they shared together, but something that was deeply internally personal to them.
Yeah. And this thought of this, this idea of like a Nepo baby and nepotism, I think a lot of the time, people who are defending it are saying, I did it all on my own, and, I didn't have any help. But something that's very important that I've realized is if you don't see that it's possible, it's very hard for you to imagine yourself doing it.
Oh, sure.
I had the kind of nepotism that I saw my sisters doing it. I saw that it was possible. I had a family that was supportive. Those are big privileges to be able to say something crazy like, I want to be an actor. For a lot of people, that's hard to even realize or imagine. And that's a huge, barrier to access. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I was able to just fearlessly say, yeah, let me try this. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, it wasn't like I had no idea what it would be like. I was able to see both of my sisters doing it. So I think that that's something I think about often when I speak to younger actors, is being sensitive to that idea that for everyone who wants to be, whether it's in the entertainment industry or anything, it's very helpful to have the support and a family that believes in you and other people that that you can look up to that have had success, that you can say, oh, this is an actual road I can go down.
That makes a lot of sense, really, because I think with anything that you're trying to do in life, whether it's just the job that you do as an everyday in your everyday life, or you're reaching out for something in the entertainment world, maybe something that's outside of your comfort level where you have to reach out, put more of yourself out there. If you can't conceptualize yourself doing that thing, whatever it may be, you're right. I think you're going to struggle with allowing yourself to enjoy whatever it is, allowing yourself to say, hey, yeah, I can do this, and giving yourself that sense of inner pride and stability, and saying that, yeah, I can move forward. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's a really cool concept, because so when I, even with it, just thinking about doing it with this, like, when I got started in podcasting, I did not think that I would ever have be able to talk to anybody and hold an interview and have a conversation with somebody about it. Mainly because I didn't see myself in that lane. I didn't see myself doing those type of things. And it's kind of, it's, I say funny, but it's not really funny. I mean, I got into podcasting because my daughter was hospitalized for a very long time, just under 100 days with a critical health condition.
Oh my God.
And so when we came out of it, I was trying to sort these things out. And I had a whole bunch of other fun things that my natural father had gifted me with, that I was working through with. I decided it was time to go talk with a counselor after all the hospital stuff. And then I was like, well, yeah, we should probably go talk to somebody about this. And, they wanted me to do some writing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a writer. That's never going to happen. Okay, well, maybe you could video record yourself talking about, do a vlog. I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to sit in front of a camera and talk to myself or somebody else. That's never going to be a thing. So it's funny to me now because, I was so worried about making it about me that one of my friends was like, don't make it about you, make it about other people's experiences and everything else. And that was like the best free therapy I ever had, talking to people, how they overcame challenges and problems and all these different things. And it really did help me, and it really made for some nice conversations.
That's incredible.
But it's funny. Yeah, it's funny to me now because, I've done 400 and some odd episodes of this show. My very first show, I did about 120 episodes of that. And, and I'm a writer as well now. So, all the things that I said I couldn't do is because I couldn't visualize myself doing them. And once I had that little snippet of self-belief, being able to visualize myself, conceptualize myself doing those things became a lot easier.
Yeah. And it's always scary. I find that when I speak to other people in the industry, we speak a lot about, the fears and anxieties around being public people, sharing a lot of ourselves. It's all that also is something for people who want to, be performers. It's what you're saying. It's just getting that comfort and that belief in yourself, and then being able to just take that really scary step to say, is this something I can do? Is it not? And if it isn't, great. At least you figured it out. and you can move on. But
Right.
it is taking that one step that's the scary part. Because it is, yeah, it's sharing yourself with an audience, and that's very vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about sharing bits of yourself with your audience that can be scary and very vulnerable, I'd like to ask you a question. Now, this is a question that I asked your sister when I had her on the show, and so I'm going to ask it to you the same word for word, verbatim that I asked her. I went back actually to my notes from her interview,
Wow.
copied, pasted, and I thought, you know what? I'd love to get your insight on this to see what your thoughts were. Now, so the question goes like this. Now, according to the internets, your father is Jewish, your mother is First Nations from Saskatchewan. How have these cultural influences challenged you as both a person and your choices in your performances?
Yeah. For me, I would say I'm interested to now listen to her episode and see what she said. I feel very differently now as an adult, but definitely growing up in the industry and being a white passing native performer, I never really felt like I fit in or that I, um, looked native enough or felt native enough. And then I also felt like from casting perspectives, I wasn't exactly what people wanted, like as a native actress. I didn't look
Okay.
like stereotypical, like long hair, braids, dark, you know. So
Yeah.
I think that that was something that kind of got into my head a bit in terms of like my worth.
Mm,
And then interestingly enough, I never really thought about it from a Jewish perspective. It was a lot of it was because I was working a lot as a native actress. And then I think in the last few years, after having conversations with, Jewish performers, maybe in the last 5 years, I realized, oh my gosh, there's so many similarities. Like when I go on set, I'm sometimes the only Jewish person there, the same way that I used to feel about being the only native person there. So I think I started to connect some of the feelings of insecurity from both sides. And that has led me to be very aware of how I represent myself and how I honor both of those cultures. And even when I come on and, speak publicly, as often as I can, I try and say, like, I only represent myself. Like, I'm not here to speak for native
sure.
actors and I'm not here to speak for Jewish actors. Like but definitely this idea of wanting to acknowledge and respect this legacy that I was
Mm,
given, like from my grandfather who was a Holocaust survivor and
yes.
my mother's parents who are residential school survivors. It's such a privilege to be doing what I'm doing and to be a public figure. And there's just as I've matured, I realized there was just a bit more of a responsibility to that. And then as I had more privilege, I was able to make choices on the types of roles I did want to do and didn't want to do. But there was always something that I felt a responsibility to be respectful to where I came from. So if there was like scripts or characters or stuff
Hmm.
or things that came across that I felt, oh, I'm not sure I feel comfortable doing that. I've always been pretty aware that there's a way that I want to represent myself and my
Right. Right.
family versus the way that, other people want to represent my community. So I think the way it's affected me as a performer is that I've had to be very conscious and like be very protective. And there's something funny that I've said just, to other actors, behind the scenes where I'm just like, God, I would love to just be like an actor where I could like make decisions like other actors and like worry about actory things and not worry about, racism and,
Yeah. Yeah.
fighting writers or directors because they think that native people look like this or talk like this. Like it's a full-time job on top of the job that we're doing for a lot of
Yeah.
marginalized communities to just make sure that, that we're being represented how we want to be represented.
No, that makes a lot of sense to me because I think, from the outside looking in, um, clearly highly Caucasian over here. Uh, uh, and I'm my heritage is Irish, so I uh I represent that well. Blonde hair, blue eyes, that's the thing. But I listening to what you're saying, it's kind of interesting to me because I'm thinking about how you have a foot, in two very distinct cultures with a proud heritage in both, and there's so much to be proud of in each one of those. And I would have to imagine, again, this is from outside looking in, of course, that there'd have to be some times where there would have to be an emotional pull, one way or another, depending on how things were going, because of maybe this one, like you were talking about, having to deal with racism and having to deal with stereotypes for both being indigenous and Jewish at the same time. I would imagine that would have some pretty wild emotional pulls for you at times.
Yeah. I mean, there's in in any marginalized community that's going through anything in society that other people know about culturally,
Mhm.
whatever that is. um there's definitely it's very tied up in the work we're doing. It was very hard
Mhm.
for me to show up. For example, I was working on a project, and it was when they had first found uh, some unmarked graves in Canada of the children that went to residential school.
Mm.
And I had to be on a call with other producers about a project, and nobody mentioned it. And that's something that's very specific to my heritage, my
Oh, sure.
family.
Yeah.
It was a residential school, that I knew of, and that was close to the community that my mother's from. And so those are things when it overlaps that you're kind of forced to continue the conversation when emotionally you feel like you need time off. And I think only now we're starting to have a conversation even about mental health, or when
Oh,
people
yeah. Yeah.
when families are going through something, just to have some kind of conversation about empathy, and that stuff happens to people.
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't show up in the way we need to, but we're so afraid of saying that we can't. And there's no real guidelines or cultural acceptance or social acceptance to say, yeah, that person might need a few days off for this, or let's figure
Yeah.
this out together, or have a conversation. We kind of put a lot of that under the rug. So I hope that that's changing in terms of how we have conversations about the workplace, period. But definitely the entertainment industry has a terrible, terrible track record of those sensitivities. So it's moving slowly, but I definitely think, we have a lot further to go. But this idea of that we're human beings all having an emotional experience, and stuff's
Right.
happening in our lives,
Yeah.
and it affects our day-to-day work. I think that for my two communities, there just happened to be a lot going on a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
that's really something that I'm, learning also day to day, is how to give myself space and time for that. And be able to, show up for my responsibilities, but be kind of honest with myself. So I hope that we're all doing that, but I would definitely say, as a performer that's dealing with those two community poles emotionally, it's definitely a constant conversation in my mind of, how do I show up? Where do I show up? When do I show up? When do I take time for myself?
Yeah. I could see that as a definite challenge. I will say, from being a non-performer, the things that I've
You're
noticed, but you
performing
you
right
mentioned,
now. You are a performer.
maybe, uh, but I noticed, for myself, because having some of my own mental health issues and having to come to terms with those things and work through those things, and noticing the change that the entertainment industry has gone through in the last, specifically the last 5 to 10 years, about the representation of what
Mm.
mental health looks like. And not everybody who's having some mental health issues is in a straight jacket in a padded room somewhere. Not everybody's crazy. Just, well, I am crazy, but that's a whole different topic. That's a whole different reason. But I would have to think that, I would like to think, I should say, that it's becoming some of the same things for the marginalized communities, where we're showing more humanity to these folks and what their life is going through. And it's not just, your average white guy's life and going through whatever how they see it. And so I think that's kind of a nice touch from my perspective and how I've seen and noticed things with mental health.
Yeah, I mean, for so many different subjects like that, for grieving and loss and,
Yeah.
family dynamics. Like if we look at some of the films from 25, I mean, you don't even have to go back 25 years, like the way we represented all sorts of communities. I mean, it's just
Oh
the
yeah.
tip of the iceberg for, you know, visible minorities, but we're talking about people who are differently abled, people who are
Yeah.
dealing with a host of other things that have nothing to do with race or religion. So there's just there, and I think too, like when you were saying that you're Irish, like everyone comes from somewhere and
Exactly.
everyone has their own legacy and their family legacy and their family heritage. And I think the more specific we get when we represent, these cultures in the media, in the arts and entertainment, it becomes so universal because everybody has very common themes that they're working with, that they see themselves in when
Hmm.
they're watching, when they're watching film and television or a musical or listening to music. So I think there's space for everybody's stories to be told authentically from so many different perspectives. Because then we're just getting closer to the truth of like who we are. We don't have to pretend anymore that men are like this or women are like this, and this is what marriage is like, and these are
Right.
what communities are like, and this is what family dinner should be like, and this is what high school is like. Like it was told from very few perspectives for so long,
Yeah.
and you kind of felt like a loser if you weren't having that experience.
Yeah. Oh,
Like
for
you
sure.
felt like you left out, or you're just like, oh, that was, why did everyone else have such a great experience? It's like nobody had that experience. That's a movie.
I saw it it was kind of funny. So if you notice the top of our screen, it says "Welcome to the Level Up Sabers Studios." Now, the owner of Level Up Sabers, his name is Alan White, and Alan has a really cool TikTok page, and just a really good guy, and I'm proud to be sponsored by him. But we were he was talking about in the one of his TikToks about it came in, he stitched it into somebody else's post, but they started off on this thing about about men being men and women being women, and this was that and that was this, and why can't we do this? And he's like, I don't understand why we fetishize the 1950s. you know it's not even a misconception, it's a straight on fetish of what
Yeah.
things, how things could be and should be. And there's we've gotten to a point in time where it feels like there's not any allowance for nuance or shades of
Mm.
gray between myself and you. We all have to be cookie cutter. We must be this, we must be that. And I
You must
kind of like,
identify with
yeah,
something very specific.
yeah. And frankly, I kind of enjoy people's shades of gray. That's
Yeah.
what makes them unique and what makes them fun. And I mean, God, if everything tasted like, you know, dog kibble, we'd all be yeah, how disappointing would that be? And I think the same way about people. What if we were all the same shape, size, color, size, whatever? It'd just be boring. So, yeah.
I've really had the privilege to be able to play characters that I feel, are outside of the normal representation of,
Okay.
who those women would be otherwise.
Right.
And it's such a joy to be able to like participate in the changing of those narratives, because it just really is. It's character by character, film by film, role by role.
Yep.
That's
Brick by
how we're
brick.
slowly, yeah, changing. It's not going to happen
Hmm.
overnight. It's not a tidal wave. It's like drop in a puddle with waves, with the
Oh
ripple
yeah.
kind of thing. I think, I've over the years, the people that I'm working with now have just such a better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And it's worse in a lot of ways, but I do have hope that things are moving in a good direction, at least in the
Same.
communities that I'm existing in at the moment.
Okay. All right. I like those answers. Those are good. All right. So let's segue into a slightly similar topic, but just perhaps a little bit different. Now, the reason I always ask that first question about people, how they got started is because I like to know what makes people tick. I
Hmm.
like to know why they do what they do. Why are they so enveloped in this community or that community, and what causes them to be the person they are. And so for me, it's always kind of fun to get to know that background of people. Now, one of the other things that I do, other than ask people that question, is I find myself strolling through their Instagram pages, uh, because it's fun to, like I said, I get to know who they are, see what they're passionate about. And I saw that you were at a point working for a foundation or with a foundation called Unlock Her Potential.
Hmm.
And so I was hoping that you would talk to the audience about what that is and why it's important to you.
Oh, well, it was created by Sophia Chang, and she's just an unbelievable powerhouse who really experienced through her incredible experience in, music and media and the industry that women needed mentorship
Okay.
and that they weren't getting either the mentorship that they deserved or the mentorship that their male counterparts
Okay.
were receiving, and that it needs to be an active choice to be sharing resources
Mm-hmm.
and elevating young people who are going to be the next generation, in all different industries. With Unlock Her Potential, they cover so many industries. And I had met Sophia. Um, she reached out to me because she loved Reservation Dogs. And then I read her book and I became such a fan of hers. And she was just starting Unlock Her Potential. And I was able to be a mentor through the program. And I loved it. And I realized that it was something that, even though I had my sisters and I had some other people, I was never given like specific time once a month with someone to kind of just be a sounding board or just to give me a pep talk.
Okay. Sure.
And it was just a really special program to be a part of. And it's just exploded, and it's incredible to see the talent. And then it's also I found it really incredible as a mentor because I got to meet I got to meet a group of women once in Los Angeles. We were at a dinner that Sophia hosted. And I got to meet women that I was really like in awe of, that were doing incredible things.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's so crazy. Like, even if you're a mentor, there's still so much more for you to learn,
Oh, for
like it's a
sure. Yeah.
constant evolution of, who we are. And it's such a great program. If anyone wants to support it, you can go to the website. But it's just a beautiful, also just a beautiful like way of having faith that like when you have a vision to better the world or better your community
Mm-hmm.
and you're dedicated to it, it's very possible.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, I will make sure to include a link for Unlock Her Potential down in the show notes down below so
Great.
that people can check that out and see if there's some mentorship that perhaps they're missing out on.
Cool.
And,
Very cool.
I think that's an excellent opportunity. And I love programs like that because I have 3 children, and my first 2 children are boys. My third is my daughter. She's my baby. But I've fought very hard with her to make sure that she has the same opportunities that my boys
Mhm.
had.
Mhm.
And I have made it clear to all of my children that I'm an equal opportunity father. If it was good enough for the boys, it was good enough for my daughter, and if it's good enough for my daughter, it's good enough for the boys. So there was so I love opportunities like this where we're able to help somebody to get onto an equal and level playing field.
Yeah.
And I think that that's fantastic.
I
So
think it's
I
interesting too what you mentioned, because my son is 17 months old and I didn't imagine what it would be like to be a boy mom, but I also want him to understand his options outside of the
yeah.
usual, gender norm options for boys. And I hope that we get to a point where, nobody has to fit into a box and nobody has to, go down a path that they think they need to for
Hmm.
any reason. And that every kid feels inspired to move spiritually through the world the way that they want to and to be encouraged to do so.
Yeah.
Because I'm finding with parenting, like that's all it is. It's just guiding they're
Yeah.
like these little, what did I call my son? He's like what do you call it? When you're, oh my goodness, like a little animal that's not, oh my
I
gosh.
I called my children feral sacks of flesh
Yeah.
because
Like it really is like an undomesticated animal.
yes. Oh,
I'm trying to domesticate him in the
100%.
best
Yeah.
ways, but also
100%
like
spot
not
on.
domesticate him too
Yeah.
much. Teach
Spot
him how to
on.
eat and go to the bathroom and clean up after himself, but also
Yeah.
to just like, dream big and be kind and,
Yeah. Oh, that yeah,
be a good
100%.
human.
You're spot on with that. It's a 24/7 challenge, especially at, this day and age, with the immediacy of everything that they can get their fingers on once they're of a certain ages. And oh boy, that's a whole nother challenge that you're gonna
Yeah.
want to walk yourself through. But it's funny too because you talked about societal norms and things like that. It was funny too because no, I was a stay-at-home dad for 15 years, and I raised my kids, and
Um,
um I had some health issues back in my early 30s, and so I had to stay home.
yeah.
But we got through those, and it was kind of interesting because when it was time to, when we started talking to people about what we were doing, my wife and I were both very comfortable with it. And I didn't realize the societal norms around me that we're going to have such an issue with a man being home and allowing his wife to go to work, because my wife had killer health insurance. And and that was it. I mean, that was honestly the deciding factor when my wife and I were sitting down talking about it. We both made good money. One of us had to stay home. I had some health issues. She had killer health insurance. And we were like, yeah, it's going to go on you. And, I'll try and pick up some of the slack here with doing some working part-time here and there, working from home, doing all these different things. Found a bunch of remote work for a long time. And that buoyed us for a while. But it was interesting the number of people that were like, well, you're not a man. You're not a man because you stayed home with your children. You're doing a woman's work. And I'm like,
What?
yeah, oh yeah, that was many.
I wish people knew how hard it was to stay home with children.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like the
That's
hardest job you can do.
yeah. I'm like, I don't know what you guys think I'm doing during the day. I am not watching soap operas and eating bonbons. This is not easy work, especially with 3 kids, 2 dogs, 2 cats.
No.
I
My
was
son, my son isn't in daycare. He's 17 months. My
okay.
husband and I travel so much for work. I couldn't do what I do without my husband. My husband, thank goodness, is also in the entertainment industry, is able to work remotely. But like we were just in Chicago. I just did a film in Chicago for 5 weeks. He was out there with our son. He
Awesome.
worked when my son napped. He was able to work
Hmm.
in those minuscule hours. We had
Yep.
our family come out to help and support, but really I couldn't work without him doing that. But even with those norms, like, it's still very weird for people to hear that we have a child not in daycare. Like, it's just so strange to people. And
Which I
I'm
don't
learning too
understand that.
I'm learning too as a new mom, even just like the weirdest things people find so discombobulating.
Yeah.
and I think what you're doing or what I'm doing is like, we're just trying to make our life work with
Right.
children.
Yeah.
And I trust that we're going to figure it out. We're going to find our footing. But, of course, if he needs something else, we'll, stop travel, or, we're going to accommodate whatever he needs. But at the moment, it's working for us. We travel a lot. We kind of pass him back and forth during the day when, he's like at his parents right now with him, so that I could be here to do this, like, and vice versa. So it is interesting. I've just the misconceptions and the misunderstandings and the judgments in the parenting community that I really, like, I heard about it. It was a problem and it's annoying, but like being in it is really quite illuminating to be experiencing it from other parents, just their utter confusion about our lifestyle. And it's really interesting.
You have to develop some pretty thick skin pretty early, because I was more amazed that, like, I'd be going through the grocery store pushing my daughter in a cart, and she's like, where's, I had a lady walk up to us, an older lady. She's like, well, where's her mommy? I'm like, her mommy's at work. I'm her father. Well, why aren't you at work? Because I'm taking care of my daughter. And she had all these questions and all these things that I went, at some point you're just like, it works for us, so that's all that matters. And you just have to get some thick skin. But it always amazed me too, because people said the same thing to us about childcare, was that, well, you're not putting them in daycare. Why would I, if they could be with their parent?
Yeah.
Why would I give them to a stranger and pay them to watch my child for me, so I could go to work just to make enough money to pay for childcare?
It's that whole situation is so weird. Just the childcare being so expensive. Like,
I swear to God, that's run by the mob.
It's so wild. It is wild. But yeah, it's really, hopefully, I mean, in the entertainment industry, it's not strange. Like, I come across all sorts of situations, but definitely the people that I meet or that I come across that, have a very, I would say, stereotypical lifestyle, find it very hard to understand.
All right, we're going to change gears again here a little bit. Now, it's kind of interesting for me because we've gone this far without me talking to you about Resident Alien, which is that has changed right here, right now. Because now, for those of you who haven't caught on, the Resident Alien did conclude its run this season, and the show is no more. Many sad faces, and it should have continued, but that's a whole other topic for a whole other time. But I also find that some of these shows that are written comedically and have comedic leanings, there's some really interesting lessons that can be learned and gained from them. Mm-hmm. Resident Alien, for me, is one of those shows. I look at it in much the same vein as I did the show Ted Lasso, with some of the lessons that taught the audience. So from your perspective, as someone who is a cast member on the show and involved in the seasons, what is the best lesson that Resident Alien helps teach its audience, in your opinion?
I think love. I don't know if that sounds strange, but
no, not at all.
We have Harry, who comes to Earth like with a very specific specific purpose, and through meeting people and being in the community, he learns how to love. Mm-hmm. Like, this is something that we can nurture and develop. And I think, especially with so much division these days, it is possible to learn how to love people that, we may not agree with, mm-hmm. and not like be in love with them, but just show love or compassion.
Common care.
Yeah, like every episode I read, and especially for my character, for Kayla, a lot of the beginning stuff was was about that, was to give Asta, support that maybe
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't given, and just to be very empathetic and just to be such a friend to her. So I always saw it from that lens, from my character's story, that it was just
Sure.
always about, giving space to grief and sadness and giving space to confusion and all that stuff. And then that just seemed kind of like an overarching theme. And then especially with the last two seasons, our attachment to each other, and like that's what makes the world go round, is that this love is really the only thing that we have at the end of the day. So I would say that. I would say, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to stick
I
with
like
that
that.
answer.
Excellent. You didn't even have to phone a friend. Congratulations. Good job. No, I agree with that. I was looking at it, in pretty much the same light, but slightly different wording, obviously. I was thinking of from the word of acceptance, accepting people for their idiosyncrasies of who they are, not, for what they are underneath, not exactly what we see on the surface, because there's so much that we learn about each character in Resident Alien as the 4 seasons go on. And we start off with just what we see, especially with Harry. What we see is people are judging that, and what his first initial reactions with people are, and everything. So I think it's very cool that we see him even though he's obviously an alien, embrace his humanity to the extent that he does, and his own level of acceptance of what's going on in this world around him. So I think that, for me, that's how I saw it. So
That's
I'm kind of
very
glad that I'm kind of glad we are kind of on the same page on there. I feel like I got the whole point of the show. Yay!
I mean, that's what I thought it was. You can ask Chris Sheridan what it is. He may have a totally different answer, but I feel like that would be one of his answers.
I would love to ask Chris Sheridan that question. So, okay, very cool. Well, we're at a point of the show where I'd like to ask people, and this is another one of those questions where I get to know a little bit more about you. I call it suggestion time. So, Sarah, what are you reading or listening to that you think everybody else should know about? And it's with a 17-month-old child, it's completely okay to say "Goodnight, Moon."
I was just thinking, I'm like, what have I read other than Learn How to Say Goodnight, or The Wheels? I do sing Baby Beluga to him every night.
Nice.
What am I reading or listening to? To be honest, like I haven't had a lot of time to listen to anything
Understandable.
or to read anything. I only recently got back on Instagram on my phone. I had to took a bit of a hiatus because it was just fogging up my brain. But
Fair.
I don't know if I can answer that fairly.
That's fine. It's not like you haven't had something,
I'm trying to think of something even like recent, like in the last few years. I can't even remember. My brain. I got baby brain.
You know what? That is the best and most acceptable answer that you could possibly give.
I'm listening to a lot of music. We're introducing a lot of music to my son.
Okay.
So we're listening. He loves disco and funk.
Oh,
and
nice.
What I love. Okay, here's something interesting. Yeah. What I love is I love listening to all of that old music. We're listening to a lot of Steely Dan too, which I'm falling in love with all over again, because I kind of I grew up with Steely Dan, and then all of a sudden I'm listening to it again, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is just so good. But
for sure.
What I've noticed is just I love finding all the songs where I'm like, oh man, that person sampled that and that sampled that. You're realizing where all these amazing songs came from.
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny that we'll be listening to something and we're like, we know what is that? And now it's funny because people are sampling stuff that's seems vintage, but it's from the 90s.
Yeah, that hurts. I'm like, well, thank you for my reminder to.
That just happened.
Thank you for my reminder to take an Advil.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the same thing with Steely Dan and even Donald Fagen's solo stuff. So for me, how I got reintroduced back into Steely Dan, so I participate in this thing. It's called the 1001 album challenge. It's a random thing on website on Google. If you Google that, there's this guy put together this list of 1,001 albums he thinks everybody should listen to before they die. And now some of them, hot garbage. Some of them, but there's been quite a few where I've been like, oh man, I don't know what I'm gonna. Steely Dan was one of those because my dad used to listen to Steely Dan all the time when I was growing up, and I always thought it was stupid. I was like, I was very much into like 90s grunge and everything as a teenager. And I just remember, my dad listening to Steely Dan, and I'm like, well, that's stupid. Why would you ever listen to that? And now I'm like, I had a couple different Steely Dan albums assigned to me, when so the way it works, you get your album assignment, and then at like midnight, you get an opportunity to go in and review that, give it a 1 to 5 stars, tell everybody what you think about it, you submit it, it gives you your next album. And so I'm like 200 and some odd days into this, and I have absolutely been loving it because there's been so much that I had forgotten about music wise. And I like to think that I have a pretty eclectic music taste. I listen to a little bit of everything, honestly. But so like Steely Dan was one of them. Yesterday's album was one of the ones from Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that had like 9 songs on it. I listened to the album like 3 times yesterday at work, just let it loop through because it was so good. Yeah. And I was just like, it's one of those things like I hear these songs and I'm like, I know these songs, and I'm like, oh, that's by them. That's who that does this. Yeah. That's fantastic. So that's been, for me, that's been a really cool discovery. And
also because my husband's a musician, like,
oh, cool.
Like buying albums on iTunes and just like, if I can say, like, if there is something that people love that they're listening to, just buy the album, or like see if you can buy stuff off of the artist's website, or if there's, we're in a time now where it's just like so unfair how artists are being treated and how their music is being shared without their consent. Sure. So that's what I want to suggest and advise, is that if there are artists that you love and support, if you can buy directly from them, great. If you can buy the whole album and not stream it, and just because I'm still old school like that. I will buy an album. I have
a vinyl collection. I understand. Yeah. So I go to the artist's website, if at all possible, buy the vinyl from them, have it shipped to me.
Yeah.
You might pay a couple dollars extra, but it's awesome to know that you're supporting the artist directly. Totally. And there's not somebody, I mean, there's always going to be a little bit less that they're getting anyway, because they have to pay for shipping. They got to pay for this, they got to pay for that, but they're getting a larger share. They're getting a larger cut off of their, So,
and even if it's on iTunes and you buy the whole album on iTunes instead of streaming it, that even makes a difference too.
It does. Because they're not even getting pennies on the dollar when it comes to streaming. Both iTunes and Spotify are horrible for that. Having had a chance to talk to a couple different musicians about that. Yeah, if at all possible, buy it, then listen to it. Buy the album from their website. Buy their merch from their website. Don't go to Amazon to buy it. I mean, I'm guilty of that too. Don't get me wrong. I've bought from Amazon because, you don't have a choice anymore. I purchased something online from a company, and it came in an Amazon box, and I was like, wait, how did this happen? I tried to avoid this. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder too. So.
It is. We're all just doing our best out here.
Absolutely. All right, Sarah, we have reached a point in the show where I need to ask you a silly question.
Great.
So I've got a couple of other people who help me out with the show. One of them is my good friend Kathleen. And Kathleen was out and about with her daughter one day, who was about 5 at the time. I think she's 6. So if Kathleen's daughter is listening to this right now, don't pay attention to the fact that Uncle Tim doesn't know how old you are. I think she's 6.5, maybe close to 7 now. Anyway, long story short, somebody asked her daughter this question, but not Kathleen. And we were like, well, that's rude. You should never age out of this. So that question is, Sarah Podemski, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Oh, I want to say Triceratops, because there was a movie called The Land Before Time that I was obsessed with as a kid. And I'm pretty sure that this Triceratops name was Sarah, and
Yes,
she
it
was
was.
so bullish, and she was
Yes.
so stubborn,
Spicy.
and I loved it because obviously that's
Yes.
who I am. So I'm gonna go with Triceratops.
Well, you have chosen wisely. Um, Triceratops is also my favorite dinosaur. Long story short, I grew up loving rhinos, and I was like, "Ooh, Triceratops, triple rhino." And then there
Totally.
was and then there was Land Before Time, and I always thought Sarah was funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she represented a lot of similarities with my own personality. So I was
Yeah.
like, yeah. So very good. I do support that choice 100%. So well done for you.
Thank you.
All right, Sarah, thank you so much for being on the FSF Podcast today. Where can my listeners go to find out more about you, your work, and anything you've got coming up next?
I would say Instagram. I'm slowly getting back on there, so I'll be on there promoting some exciting stuff soon. Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I will make sure that we put a link for your Instagram page down below in the
Great.
show notes, along with your Instagram handle, so that way our listeners can go check you out and give you a follow.
Perfect.
And hey, guys, speaking of follows, this seems like a prime time to remind you that following our show here on YouTube is the most important free thing that you can do today. It costs you exactly this many dollars, whether Canadian or American. It's absolutely free. So please give us a follow. It means more than I can ever really tell you. It helps us out considerably. And it helps us to get more amazing guests like Sarah Podemski here today to have on the show. I have some cool conversations with and share some laughs with. So please do that. It helps us out. And go check out Sarah's work as well. Like I said, we'll have a link for Unlock Her Potential. We'll have a link for her IMDb page and her Instagram page, all down in the show notes down below, so you guys can check those out. So again, thank you to Sarah Podemski for being a guest on the show. Thank you to everyone for listening and or watching if you're here on YouTube. And may the force be with you as you continue to live long and prosper. Goodbye.
Copyright 2025 FSF Podcast. Reference to any specific product or entity mentioned on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by FSF Podcast. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. If you have any questions about this disclaimer, please contact us via email at info@fsfpodcast.com.